I'm David Hamilton, and I'm the composer of this year's show, In Times Of. The show In Times Of deals with times that we all go through, times of innocence and optimism, times of struggle and conflict, times of loss and sadness, and times of reflection, when we look back at the other times of our lives and try to make some sense of them. When the designers and I got together, we knew this year's show would be about time, but we didn't have the full story really sketched out at that point. That's why I started with the idea of musical time. There are a lot of ways that we use time in music. We have meter, which is the number of beats in a measure. We have rhythm, which is the way that we organize the notes to create interesting patterns and sequences. And there's tempo, which is the speed with which the beats pass. Tempo is usually described as BPM, or beats per minute. Our show goes from 160 beats per minute at the fastest, all the way down to 0 when we come to a complete stop, and everything in between. Before we get talking about musical time, I need to talk about one harmony that might stick out to you during movement 2. It's this one. Put simply, it's a minor chord, which sounds like this. But we've added the 7th note of the scale, and instead of using the flat 7, we used a major 7th. And putting those together, it sounds like this. I love this chord. It sounds so creepy and dark and weird, and makes you wonder what might be lurking right around the corner. In fact, this was used in a lot of the soundtracks for Alfred Hitchcock movies. That's why I love it. If you put a few of those chords together, you get this pattern that you'll hear in movement 2. And if you add an equally creepy melody, you'll get this. In a show about time, I knew I had to use every musical time trick I could think of. One of those is rhythmic compression. This is also sometimes called diminution, but I like compression better. Here's an example of rhythmic compression from movement 2. We start with a 6-beat phrase, then shorten it to 3 beats, then shorten it again to 2 beats. When you put those back to back, it feels like we're running out of time, like we're rushing towards the edge of a cliff musically. Here's another example of rhythmic compression for movement 4. At the very beginning, we have our 4-note motif, but it takes 8 beats to play that whole motif, and then 6 beats, and then 4 beats, and then 2 beats. This is actually done by shortening the length of each of the notes. If you look at this example, what you see on the bottom are the actual note lengths if they were held all the way through, instead of being short and staccato the way they're played in the show. Then our motif becomes an ostinato, a repeated pattern. But even here, there's compression. The 4 notes are first spread over 3 beats, and then 2 beats. And that's repeated to accompany the melody that's played in the brass and saxophones below. As we get to the end of this phrase, we turn things around and do some rhythmic expansion, where the rhythms get longer and longer. In this case, the ostinato is first spread over 4 beats instead of 2, and then stretches out to 8 beats. That idea from the beginning of movement 4 returns to accompany the saxophone feature. And in this case, we not only have rhythmic compression, but we also offset it by a beat to create some interesting counterpoint with the saxophone part. At the end of the show, we pull out all the stops. This is probably the most complex rhythmic thing we've ever done. It's probably one of the hardest things I've ever heard in New York State. We start with our 4-beat ostinato, but as you can see, the 4-beat ostinato is actually written in 3 beats to the bar, so the ostinato doesn't quite fit and keeps occurring at a different place on the downbeats. There's also rhythmic compression as we get towards the end of that phrase. Next we add the brass playing the melody, but as you can see, the melody is 2 beats to the bar. It feels like 2/4, but it's written in 6/8, which is why all those notes have the dots after them. But this is when it gets really interesting. When we put the ostinato over the melody, we have this 3 versus 2 feeling. Our brain can kind of reconcile it at first, but as we get farther into the phrase, it's almost like our head is being split in two. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into musical time in our show, In Times Of. If you'd like to learn more about the story of the show or learn about the secret level, click on the links in the description.